Crime boss Mark McCall was a dad of three. He was also a partner to his mistress, and he was a feared gangland figure that had created a lot of enemies over the course of controlling the profitable drug empire that spanned across Yorkshire and the north of England territories. This was a time of the early 2000s, at a time where other gangsters and crime bosses were dealing with maybe 1 or 2 kilos of Class A. Mark had found a way to control the market by selling upwards of 7, 8, 9 kilos at a time. He was a big player. On face value, Mark McCall was considered a serious but pleasant man, but the crime boss was known to police. Police knew that Mark had afforded a luxurious lifestyle, such as owning a Land Rover Discovery, buying a home in the Rodley area of Leeds, and paying the premiums on his own life insurance policy. Now regarded as untouchable, Mark had hardened himself from a very young age. In 1995, Mark McCall had been arrested for GBH with intent, and he had been jailed for 42 months. On another occasion, Mark had made preparations to obtain a false passport after a fallout with known associates, such as Leeds gangster Clifton Jr. and Bolton's Billy Webb and John Barber, and also Police K. John Bieber. Now, Mark McCall was also arrested on charges of conspiracy to rival Clifton Jr. over a dispute about drug and money. In effect, Mark had not taken kindly to other gangsters trying to sell Class A in the same territory as him, and suspected that other gangsters were conspiring to take his stash from a lockup that he had rented. So feared and powerful was Mark McCall was that police believe an unnamed rival had put a bounty on Mark McCall's head. It could have been one crime boss or multiple. They may have banded together. The fact of the matter is, police don't know. At just 37 years old, on November 10, 2003, Mark had been walking through the dimly alleyway with his partner. Mark had no idea that he had been followed by a hitman, waiting, armed with a pistol, ready to kill. Mark, despite knowing he had enemies, underestimated how much gangsters in Bolton and across Yorkshire wanted him dead. Mark was not wearing any protective clothing or had a tool on him to defend himself with. The hitman had grabbed Mark, knocked over his girlfriend, and took the safety off the pistol. The pistol was then jammed into Mark's mouth, point blank. Mark, his K, and partner stood in the alley between Westdale Drive and Westdale Road, Polciy. In Mark's final moments, he must have wondered who ordered this hit and thought about his 3 children, whom were aged 19, 15, and 9. While the barrel was in Mark's mouth, the hitman then pressed the trigger. Mark was thrust backwards. Mark was then struck with AM in the temple, and then the GUN man pressed the trigger for the 3rd time, pressing the barrel into Mark's chest. Now, Kingpin, Mark McCall, was declared dead instantly. There was no coming back from that, and his M had been performed with precision, in a way that would ensure there would be no survival, and it meant to cause fear and alarm to anyone whom heard the yells, screams, shouts, cries, and the popping noise, least alone Mark's girlfriend. In the aftermath of the M, witnesses says that Mark had been ambushed after leaving his home, which meant that the person responsible had sat outside Mark's address, waited for him over a course of hours or maybe even several days. Witnesses also described to police a red Volkswagen Golf Mark II, which was parked in the same area of Mark's address, and the registration plate was J for Juliet 553 Alpha Lima N for November Alpha Lima. Police eventually tracked down that Volkswagen Golf, and evidence showed that it had been stolen from a property 2 days before the M. The Golf Mark II was eventually found nothing more than a shell and abandoned a few miles away near Brunswick Road. Witnesses also described seeing 2 men sat in that same car, their faces concealed on the day of the M2. So perfect was the crime and the fear instilled that the police were met with a wall of silence. Known gangsters were arrested in connection for the crime, including John Bieber, but all were eventually let go due to a lack of evidence. So technically, this crime still remains unsolved. Now, despite no one being jailed for the M of Mark McCall, police did make sure to claw back over £140,000 in 2007 from Mark's estate. That included the money from the sale of a house, life insurance policy, and money that was still left in Mark's own private bank account. Because the police says there was no way, with the income Mark had declared, was he able to afford the lifestyle that he lived. Mark was so feared that rivals saw no other option but to kill him in the most brutal fashion. Let me know your thoughts on the case in the comment section, and as always, stay safe.